Did you know that lateness is considered rude in many cultures?
Well, are you aware of the fact that the reason I was late tonight is because trans radicals like yourself made threats of violence against the attendees of tonight's event? So
What
that's
threat?
also very
What
rude
threat?
in Western
What threat?
civilization.
What threat?
And if you
I
want to
hear you
behave
talk
like
about
an
a threat,
animal,
but no
I
actual
suggest
threat.
you leave and
What
go
was
to the
the
zoo
threat?
where you belong.
Good chance, good chance. We love to hear it. We love to hear it. So thanks everyone for coming. Super cool for everyone to be here. My name's Brendan. I'm the president of Uncensored America here on campus. And thanks everyone for coming. We've got a really cool event for everybody tonight. And let's get it started. I'm going to hand it over to Sean to make... actually, I'm going to hand it over to Kim McMahon real quick.
Hey everybody, folks in the back, if you'll give me a second to speak. My name's Kim, I'm from the SEED team. Hold on one second. Hey, so everyone here knows that we support the First Amendment here at the university, and we'd like to let you all know of the heckler's veto that allows our speaker to be heard. So if you engage in dialogue that prevents her speech, I'll ask you to settle down, and if you continue to disrupt, I'll have you removed. So we want a good dialogue tonight. I'm going to pass it back to Sean, or to you, Brendan.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our USC event with Laura Loomer. If you heck over this event and you're silencing us with your shouting and heckling, you will be ejected from the event. But we're glad everybody came out. We're a nonpartisan free speech organization dedicated to fighting for freedom of speech. We want to bring back free speech to America. As you can see, some people don't. They don't want us to have this conversation right now. They made threats to other venues that we had and got them canceled because they made threats to it to silence us. And that's exactly what we're trying to fight against. We're trying to be able to host events when we want, where we want, with the speakers we want, to talk about the subjects we want. Because that's the only way we're going to move forward as a country, is if we can have these conversations. So if you guys would like to learn more about our organization or start a chapter on your campus, you can go to uncensoredamerica.us. You can follow all of our social medias there and watch our replays of past events with Milo, Destiny, Alex Stein, John Doyle, and Hunter Avalone, and everybody else that we've hosted. So if you want to watch those or start a chapter on your campus, just go to uncensoredamerica.us. We're on 4 chapters right now on 4 campuses, and we're growing. So follow us there if you'd like to learn more. Now, we will introduce our special guest this evening that's caused quite a ruckus on campus. I think she's going to do a great job explaining herself, so I'm just going to simply describe her as you can see, the most censored woman in the world. She's been banned on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, Uber Eats, Lyft, Medium, PayPal, GoFundMe, Venmo, Chase Bank, and even CPAC. If you hear all that yelling, that's people trying to shut us down right now. They're trying to shout over us so that you can't hear what we have to say. And then you can't hear what Laura Loomer has to say. So I'm going to introduce her now, and we're going to kick things off with the most censored woman in the world, Laura Loomer.
Thank you. Is it on? Doesn't feel like it's on. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's great to be here tonight. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. As you can see, this is the reason why we need chapters of groups like Uncensored America on college campuses, because free speech no longer exists here in this country. You're paying college tuition. You're paying college tuition to attend a university that allows your voice and the voices of those who you wish to hear from to be completely silenced by trans radicals. Absolutely.
Why were you filming the Nazi rally trying to solicit sex from teenagers.
Why don't you listen to my speech? This is my first time in South Carolina, and it's wonderful to be here at your university. As many of you know, tonight's venue had to be changed. Tonight's venue had to be changed due to threats from trans radicals who were making threats of violence. And so that's why we had to change the venue, and you have all the security here tonight. But it's a pleasure to be speaking to the South Carolina Gamecocks, and I see here in attendance we also have some maimed cocks. But, you know, perhaps they'll find their way out. Today, we clearly find ourselves living in a technocratic information war. It's a war between those of us who believe in free speech and those of us who do not. It's a war between Americans who believe that they have a right to share their views, whatever they may be, and the forces of far-left progressives and communists who want to win this war by censoring and intimidating the rest of us into silence. Some of you may not know that I'm actually the most censored woman in this country, the most banned woman in America, banned on all social media sites because of radicals like those who have joined us today who think that people who are conservative or people who have right-wing views should not be allowed to speak in America. It's not an exaggeration to say that the right to express yourself freely without fear of consequence is what has made this nation so influential, powerful, and great. There's a reason we call it the First Amendment and not the last. As a result of all of this censorship that I've been subjected to, and millions of other Americans have been subjected to, I decided to run for Congress. I ran for Congress twice in the state of Florida as an America First candidate, in 2020 and also in 2022. And for those wondering how I got started doing what I do, my conservative investigative journalism and my guerrilla activism, I got started as a young college conservative like many of you. I was actually the president of my school's college Republicans at Barry University. Yeah. I was the president of the college Republicans at my university. And as a result of being an outspoken conservative, I was actually expelled from college a month before graduation. Are you done? Are you tired? Why don't you guys listen? Why don't you listen? How am I a Nazi when I'm a Jewish woman? Do you see how ridiculous this is? I'm a Jewish woman. Can you explain to me how I'm a Nazi? So as you can see, right, they're not rational. They're anti-free speech communists, and they have no rational.
No, you know she's Jewish. How the fuck can she be fascist? She's Jewish.
Fascist free. Fascist free. UFC. Fascist free. Fascist free. UFC. 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 Fascist free.
Well, many of you paid tonight to actually hear me speak, so we're going to wait. We're going to wait since they're all in violation of the heckler's veto, and then that way you guys can actually, get your money's worth tonight and listen to me speak. So Yeah, there are people here who pay tonight to listen to this talk. So we're going to wait. No, not at all. Well, they're coming. My speech was supposed to begin at 8 o'clock, but you guys are violent and anti-free speech. You guys are hindering other students' ability to listen to a speech they paid to attend. Right. Right. We'll wait. Thank you.
She's not gonna fuck you! She's not gonna fuck you!
Hit the gym! Hit the gym!
Too.
Hit the gym, fatty! Hit the gym, fatty!
Get taller, get taller!
Give me 5 push-ups!
Stay mad! Stay mad!
Give me 5 push-ups!
It's all right. We're going to be here all night long. We're going to be here all night because I'm not leaving till I give my speech. I'm not leaving till I give my speech. You guys don't get to decide who gets to speak on your campus. You don't get to decide who gets to speak on your campus. You don't win. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving till I give my speech. So you're going to get tired. You know, I handcuffed myself to the headquarters of Twitter's headquarter office for 4 hours in 20-degree weather. You're not going to make me leave. I'll be here all night if I have to. Trans furries.
Fascist free, USC, fascist free, USC, fascist free, USC.
Student IDs.
This is not a student-only event. Fascist free, USC,
The
fascist
students
free.
that are here are getting conduct referrals. You are engaged in unlawful activity at the present time.
Our cancel culture, you're so afraid of what we have to say.
Fascist free, USC, fascist free,
You are excused.
USC, fascist free, USC, fascist free, USC, Fascist free. USC. Fascist free.
No. Come on, guys. Wait,
USC.
come on.
Fascist free. USC.
Radical free, USC.
Go the fuck home. Fascist free. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free.
We haven't made our point till she's gone.
USC. Fascist free. USC.
She's a network now. She's a Nazi.
USC.
She's a Nazi. I haven't made my point till she's gone.
She has the right to be here on a public college campus.
And we do
This is part of a public college campus.
We are organized together in protest. We are executing our rights, and we say fascist free.
Yes, but you cannot engage in a heckler's veto. It's
I will
illegal.
veto a Nazi. I will veto a Nazi.
And you are going to get arrested. No one needs to get arrested.
If you leave,
you have a right to express your opinion. She has the right to complete a sentence. Y'all can stay. Y'all can stay.
You're going to let the proud Islamophobe speak.
Yes, it is a public college.
you think
We
We
cannot.
do not debate people's human rights, but I'm sure you're happy to do that.
I'm not. I'm happy to make sure that everyone has the right to follow the First
False
Amendment on a
authority.
college campus.
Yeah.
Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. Please, oh please. I'm not gonna speak to reason. This is unreasonable.
Then why are you here? Go the fuck back, bro. What you
That's
got
what we're
homework to
telling
study?
her. Why doesn't she
Go
go
study. Go
home?
hit the books. Hit the gym. Something, bro. I'm just gonna listen. Fucking hell.
You've never read a book in your life.
I have.
You're listening.
USC.
Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free.
Now,
What are you gonna do? You're gonna touch me?
no, I'm not going to touch you. I don't want
USC.
I have no interest in seeing you arrested.
Fascist free. Fascist free. USC.
There is no reason for you to get arrested. There's none. Why do this?
Because it's important, and I'm not spineless. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. All of us. All of us.
I'm going to start with you.
USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free.
One last time.
Fascist free.
One
USC.
last
Fascist
time.
free. USC. Fascist free. USC. Fascist free.
One last time.
Can I say something real quick, guys?
Yes.
All right. I want to go home early tonight. All right. Guys, please listen to your administrator. All right. Let this meeting proceed. All right. You're more than welcome to your opinions. Okay. However, you are being disruptive. Okay. I do not want to do my job. I care about you students. Every one of you.
Aren't you the cop that let someone hit me when I was protesting something and then just
I
walked
got
in?
that wrong.
You care about someone else.
I don't believe in your institution either.
I'm not the person that calls for that.
Send it up.
However, okay, you're more than welcome to be here. But if you're just saying your administrator and it's a policy violation, okay, you guys, I don't want to have to do my job. Okay, everyone just
Wait,
listen to your administrator.
so
Yes.
is the university policy legally enforceable?
Listen, he's already explained everything to you. I don't want to have to do my job.
For non-university students.
We've already explained the rules here. Okay.
What are we being?
So
Can
let's-
I ask what they're being arrested for?
Disruption of a campus event.
So
Contradiction.
when is USC a law? Since when is USC the law enforcing body?
We have campus regulations that pertain to use of space. It's UNID 6.00. You are allowed to read it. It is clear. And again, this event is going to go on, whether you hear or not. So y'all can stay and listen and boo if you don't like something, but you can't chant throughout the whole thing.
Wait, so I don't think I can
Let me be clear, USC is
on my track.
I can book.
You can boo, but you have to allow her to complete a sentence. If she has a one point that you don't like, you can
That's
boo.
not a boo. Don't worry, you're during the sentence.
Yeah, but you have to let her complete a sentence. Okay? You can't disrupt. Yes.
All right,
Y'all
Laura,
have-
get a sentence
y'all
out.
have-
Can I ask what rule you're citing?
What's that?
What are you citing right now when you say she has to complete a sentence?
First Amendment. Constitution of the
That's
United
not
States.
the same.
Hell yeah.
Heckler's veto.
Oh yeah, get a video. You got nothing better to
Okay.
do.
Yeah, she does.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, it's great to finally see some university officials stand up for the First Amendment and the right for free speech on a college campus. The group who brought me here today is called Uncensored America, and it's ironic that on a college campus, while being hosted by a group called Uncensored America, that we're being censored by trans radicals who are calling myself and other attendees fascists. But you're calling me a Nazi. We just had to have the police come in and issue a heckler's veto and threaten people with arrest just so that I could finish a sentence without being shut down. This is representative of the information warfare and the free speech crisis that is taking place in our country today, all across the country, on many college campuses, in educational institutions, in every single institution in our society. And it's sad that at a university where students come and they're supposed to be paying tuition to learn and be subjected to a diverse group of opinions and different viewpoints, that they have to live in fear that they're going to be assaulted, fear that they're going to be silenced, fear that they're going to be attacked for not just voicing their own opinion, but just showing up to attend a speech. It's a scary time in America when you have to be worried that you're going to be attacked and physically assaulted simply because you show up to listen to a speech. And, you know, nobody here is telling you that you can't voice your opinions. There's going to be about a 45-minute Q&A, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have during the Q&A. But if you're going to be here for the speech, you need to listen and allow for other attendees who paid to attend and purchased a ticket to attend to listen to the speech. It's not an exaggeration to say that the right to express yourself freely without fear of consequence is what has made this nation so influential, so powerful, and what has separated us from every other country on this planet. We are the only country in the world that has a First Amendment. And as you can see, that's withering. And I am the human embodiment of what it means to be censored and have your First Amendment rights and your civil liberties stripped away. Over the last 5 years, as a conservative investigative journalist and activist, I have been banned on nearly every single social media site, making me the most banned woman in the entire world. I've been banned on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, Medium, PayPal, Uber, Lyft, Uber Eats, Teespring, Venmo, GoFundMe, Cash App, and even briefly Chase Bank. Luckily, Sean was kind enough to give me a ride tonight, so I didn't have to walk here, given that I'm banned on Uber and Lyft. My views and the views that resulted in me getting banned are actually more commonplace in America than you may think. These are just mainstream conservative views, but they have been labeled as hate speech, even though the Supreme Court in our country has already ruled that there's no such thing as hate speech. I was banned, and maybe some of you will be banned or have been banned from different social media sites simply because I'm an effective, conservative, right-wing activist and journalist, and because I tell uncomfortable truths that the left is afraid of, and they don't want me to have a platform to voice these views to potentially influence others. I'm not afraid of anybody. But when your group decides to incite violence against peaceful attendees, you are making violent threats to the school officials who had to change the venues. And as you can see, this isn't unique to your campus, University of South Carolina. We see the rise of trans radicalism all across our country. Just a few weeks ago, Riley Gaines was assaulted while giving a speech at a university by violent trans activists who slapped her in the face. Last month, we saw a trans radical terrorist open fire in a Christian school, killing innocent Christian children. So what you're seeing tonight is a classic case of projection. And while they call us fascists and Nazis, they are acting like the real fascists and Nazis. Like many of you, I got my career started as a young college conservative. I was the president of College Republicans at Barry University in Miami Shores, Florida, and ended up getting expelled from my university a month before graduation for doing an undercover expose with James O'Keefe of Project Veritas, who I then went on to work for several years. So when I finished school, it was about 2015. That's when all of this woke college, crazy campus radicalism really started taking place in our country. And as you can see, it's only gotten much worse. It's only gotten much worse. And until people like yourself are brave enough to stand up and fight back against the silencing of voices and the silencing and the threats and intimidation of the First Amendment, nothing is going to change in this country. So you should really applaud yourself for being here tonight and having the courage to fight for free speech. I decided, after I was banned on all of the various social media sites, I decided that if I wanted to make a difference and prevent this from happening to other Americans and people like yourself, I would need to be the change that I wanted to see. And so I ran for Congress twice, in 2020 and in 2022 in Florida, where I ran as an America First candidate. And my main platform issue was breaking up big tech tyranny and combating big tech social media censorship. And when I filed to run for Congress originally in 2019, I was mocked by the Republican Party. I was mocked by people on my own side of the aisle who thought that it was a pointless effort to run for office to address the issue of censorship and big tech tyranny and the influence that these companies are exerting on our elections. And for years as an activist, when I had access to these social media sites before being banned, I spent my time warning people. As an activist, I confronted Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, during the congressional hearing where I warned members of Congress on a committee that was mostly made up of House Republicans that big tech was silencing and shadow banning and censoring conservatives in an effort to shadow ban conservatives and influence and in their attempt to steal our elections. And years later, we now see that that's the case, especially in the aftermath of the 2020 election and now going into the 2024 election, where we see big tech social media companies, cracking down, trying to decide what people can say, what they're allowed to do, and who they're allowed to associate with. When I was banned from, I was hypnotized by a wave of inspiration to run for Congress because of all of the banning and the deplatforming, debanking, and silencing that I was subjected to. And my fear is that this would happen to millions of other Americans. And it's because of an inaction by our representatives on both sides of the aisle, not just on the left that supports this type of, radical anti-free speech behavior, but also on the right within our own Republican Party by representatives who have lacked the courage to address this issue that has escalated over the last 6 years in our country. I'm happy to answer all of your questions during the Q&A, but you're being disruptive. You're being disruptive and you're preventing other people from listening to my speech. As a candidate who was completely deplatformed, not only did I go into my campaign not having any access to social media as a private citizen, but the social media companies, including Facebook and Twitter and PayPal and even Comcast, which held a monopoly on the internet service provider in Palm Beach County where I originally ran, denied my campaign the ability to have access to campaign social media accounts. And so you can imagine what this was like campaigning in the age of COVID in 2019 when we had a national lockdown order and people were not able to go outside and knock doors and have traditional campaign events, 2019, 2020. And so everybody should be mad about it. Everybody should be mad about it. What if the tables were turned and all of the big tech social media companies were run by right-wingers and you were denied an ability to have your social media? Is Elon Musk every single big tech executive? Is he every single one? No.
He fired half his company. He's the conservative big tech CEO of Twitter. What are you talking
Because he's promoting free speech. He's promoting free speech. Throughout my campaign and even prior to my campaign, and as I continue my career as an investigative journalist and an activist, I've always maintained the fact that America First isn't just a slogan, it's not a bumper sticker, but it's also a lifestyle. America First is about putting the values that make our country great first, despite any challenge or any adversity that you may face, including being shut down with threats of violence and having radical leftists and big tech social media executives tell you that you're not allowed to speak or you're not allowed to have a voice. And they can no longer claim that this is some type of right-wing conspiracy theory. We've seen this happen for years now, and following the big tech social media hearings in Congress and the GOP House Oversight Committee, we have seen how the big tech social media companies work together with law enforcement agencies, with DHS, and with multinational corporations on a private cloud server called Jira to coordinate their efforts to not only silence conservative Americans and all political dissidents in our country, but also to interfere in our elections, And yet there's been no consequences for this whatsoever. There's no accountability because it appears that we live in a country with a two-tiered justice system. And that is on display tonight here, where you have radical trans activists and communists who are complaining and crying about being silenced because their version of being silenced is not being able to silence you. That is a two-tier justice system, and we have to fight back against it. Every single day, my rights are violated. Every single day, my rights are violated. Every single day, I've been silenced online. I've had my gun rights taken away. I've been illegally red flagged by the FBI. And so you should listen to the speech because, you know, regardless of the fact that you and I disagree, and we are ideological polar opposites, I still believe in your right to free speech. But your right to free speech and your right to be heard includes allowing for other people to be heard as well and being respectful of other opinions.
Remember when somebody had to yell over you in Congress?
Because I was fighting for people's right to free speech.
Remember when you said you were a proud Islamophobe? I remember. You didn't
Yeah.
get an answer.
I believe strongly in the wisdom of America's founding documents and the principles that underpin them. And so I believe that we must act quickly to address the threat that's posed by censorious, arrogant technology companies which interfere with our national security and the functioning of our constitutional republic. Again, that has been put on display to you tonight at your own university. And you're lucky because, as we've seen across the country, not many university officials are willing to take a hardline stance and bring the police in to enforce free speech on their college campus. Millions of college students across our country are being denied the opportunity to hear different viewpoints, are being denied the opportunity to have speakers of interest come and speak to them on their college campus because administrators who tend to be mostly made up of leftists themselves on these college campuses, which are serving as modern day Marxist indoctrination centers, tend to side with the campus radicals as opposed to fighting for free speech. I saw it firsthand as a college student when, instead of fighting for my right to free speech and my rights to express myself and expose university officials who were allowing for the creation of an ISIS club while simultaneously shutting down the College Republican Club, they decided to kick me out of college as opposed to firing the administrator. And that's something we see that's far too common on campuses across our country, and it needs to stop. Universities and colleges should be putting students first, not radical Marxist administrators and not disruptive communists who want to undermine what it means to attend a university or a college in America. If universities are not going to support and promote freedom of expression and do everything they can to fight for the First Amendment, then it's time to defund the Department of Education and cut off all funding to universities that are not going to do their job and fight for free speech. The growing trend of big tech companies like Facebook and Twitter has made one thing clear and certain. These companies, thanks to their wealth and their enormous influence that they wield regarding the flow of information and global communication, are now more powerful than most elected officials and any legislative body, including the President of the United States. Although Facebook and Twitter have been practicing forms of political censorship for years, its monopolistic power and threat to election integrity means the very concept and existence of sovereign democratic nations whose leaders are elected by the people has been completely undermined following the 2020 U.S. presidential election. And that is an issue that has not yet been addressed as we are about to head into another presidential election. Because these companies own and operate so much of the social web and wield such enormous influence over all of our lives, Twitter, Facebook, Google, and Apple have a responsibility to not interfere in lawful elections, to not interfere in the free flow of information, irrespective of its employees' personal political views. Yet we've seen that these companies are not just guilty of civil rights violations. You see, I don't think it's just a free speech violation. It is your God-given right. It is your civil right to be heard and to be able to use your voice in this country. And so when students shut you down, or when campus administrators shut you down, or when big tech social media companies shut you down, they aren't just violating free speech, they are violating your civil rights. And so we need to change the conversation from just being free speech violations to civil rights violations. And it's why I truly believe, and one of the things I advocated for as an America First congressional candidate, is updating our civil rights laws in this country to include political affiliation as a protected class. Big tech companies have a responsibility to not manipulate and distort the national discourse according to their own political preferences. Again, you see, these are 20-something-year-old, Zoomers and millennials who don't respect free speech, let alone the First Amendment. They are communists whose views are completely incompatible with Western civilization and free speech and what it means to be an American. They are anti-American. And these are the same type of people that are being employed in droves by big tech social media companies in Silicon Valley. We cannot grant overzealous, volatile 20-something political activists in Silicon Valley who are recruited from radical Marxist indoctrination camps all across the country the power to erase public figures and elected officials and candidates like myself, including the President of the United States, from the internet overnight with the click of a button simply because they told a risque joke or offended the wrong group of people. This is not how a sane society operates. It's just not. What you're seeing tonight is the definition of insanity. It really is. Yeah. Have a good night. Handing power in our country over to the most radical and also the least qualified people around is dangerous, and it's going to have catastrophic and lethal consequences for our country. We've already seen that activists like those who are here tonight think that it's okay to kill people who they disagree with. They advocate for violence under their false description and perception that people like us are Nazis and fascists who deserve to be killed simply because we have different viewpoints. It's dangerous. For this reason, as an America First candidate and as an activist, I've continued to advocate for banning affirmative action policies, not just in the workplace, but also on college campuses, because it's not going to be until we completely eradicate affirmative action and start enforcing and then defunding institutions, including institutions of higher education that violate free speech and violate the First Amendment, that we're going to have equal civil rights for all Americans. Having your civil rights respected and upheld begins with having your voice heard. And there's only one group in this country that is inherently opposed to allowing for people to be heard, and that is the radical left. If you take the First Amendment away in our country and you take away people's right to free speech, we will no longer be an America that sent a man to space or which has produced such cultural, economic, and technological marvels that it remains today the preeminent and so-called most powerful nation in the world. And if you haven't noticed, thanks to the Alzheimer's patient sitting in our White House, okay, we are witnessing a drastic decline in our country, and we are no longer considered the most powerful or the strongest nation in the world. And I blame that on cancel culture, okay? I blame that on the war on free speech. I blame that on individuals on the left and the right not having the backbone to fight back against woke cancel culture and woke insanity and woke mental illness and putting their foot down and saying enough is enough. It's why our country is being destroyed. It's why our military is now a laughingstock. And it's why university students are now performing at levels lower than students who graduate from universities in other nations, because their ability to learn and their ability to get an uninhibited education is being hindered by anti-American, communist, anti-free speech radicals. And so, in conclusion, before we begin the Q&A, you know, I'm not gonna stop traveling the country, speaking to students and people like yourself, fighting for free speech and warning them about the dangers of cancel culture. You know, I am proof in the human form of how dangerous cancel culture can be. I've been banned not just on social media sites, I've been banned from banks, payment processors, and as a candidate for Congress, I was not even able to have access to the internet in an uncensored manner, having my emails and my text messages blocked by an internet service provider, not able to communicate with constituents because radicals and overzealous 20-something-year-olds who work for these big tech social media companies decided that they didn't like my views. They think that I'm a Nazi because of my views. And so I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep speaking to people like yourself, and I encourage all of you to join the real resistance, not the radical communist resistance that shuts down people's voices and doesn't allow for the flow of information to take place, but the resistance that is combating the information war in our country. And so I just want to thank you for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm so sorry that, it took so long to get tonight's event started due to the disruptors and the violent radical trans activists who disrespected and violated your civil rights tonight. But this is, further evidence of why we need to keep on fighting and we need to stand our ground. So thank you. Thank you.
Did you know that lateness is considered rude in many cultures?
Well, are you aware of the fact that the reason I was late tonight is because trans radicals like yourself made threats of violence against the attendees of tonight's event? So that's also very rude in Western civilization. And if you want to behave like an animal, I suggest you leave and go to the zoo where you belong.
What was the threat? What was the threat? What threat? What was the threat?
Clearly, there were threats of violence that were made
What
because
threats of violence?
if I was lying, the university officials would not have changed the event location tonight. Multiple threats.
The first time was before we announced anything, I believe.
So
what threats of violence? No, what was the
threats
threat?
of
Usually
violence,
threat
threats to
comes
attack,
with-
threats to
That's not a
attack,
threat. The
and
threat is usually, I'm going
threats
to
to
do
attack
X.
attendees and the speaker. So, that's why the police are here.
No, the police are here because we showed up.
But yeah, exactly. The police are here because you showed up, because you behave like animals.
No, the police weren't here until about half an hour after the doors are supposed to open. When you still weren't here, by the way. I got here before you, which is really unprofessional, homie. I'm sorry.
Well, it's also very unprofessional.
Yeah, I
it's
asked one question
it's
here.
also unprofessional to shout people down when they're speaking when you pay for an event.
Absolutely, it is. As you said, I'm just a 22-year-old.
Great.
You're the one who's supposed to be the adult here. So why are you so unprofessional and late? How are you getting beat by a 22-year-old?
I'm not unprofessional. I'd say that unprofessional is screaming like an animal while flying the trans flag, trying to silence people from having their voices
this is a gay
heard.
flag, actually. The trans flag is completely different colors. It doesn't. The only common one is blue. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got more questions.
I think if you take your mask off and you get some fresh air, you might think a little bit more rationally. I think it's cutting off the flow of oxygen to your brain.
Yeah. Godspeed, comrade.
Yeah.
Is your only form of Riz having big tits and Ashkenazi intellect?
Is my only form of what?
Of charisma.
No, I'd say that, I have a lot of redeeming qualities. I'm really good at
This
handcuffing
is a
myself
quote
to
from
buildings.
you. This is a quote from you. Why is there a video of you trying to seduce minors with your big tits and Ashkenazi intellect?
There's no minors. Again, that's, lies being pushed by the radical trans lobby. And isn't it the trans radicals that are advocating for the sexualization of children and the grooming of children in our schools? Why is your movement in favor of chopping off the penises of young children? Why are you trying to mutilate the breasts of teenage girls? How about you address the pedophilia and the sexualization of children in your own movement?
What about
before
the
you come and try to
pedophilia in
disrupt?
Republican lawmakers?
There's pedophilia on both sides of the political
What
aisle.
about the Catholic Church pedophilia?
It's not what we're here to talk about tonight, but the
You
trans
brought up
movement.
pedophilia. You brought up pedophilia.
You just accused me of being a pedophile. You just accused me of being a pedophile, and you're going to say I brought up pedophilia?
Because you were.
I don't know. This is just very low IQ Q&A.
Okay, just quick question, okay, sorry. Okay, so you are very against ISIS, right? Just like most people, right? Have you ever tried having a civil conversation with them? Because you have a lot in common with them. You're anti-gay, they're anti-gay. You're anti-abortion, they're anti-abortion. I'm sure you can find some common ground.
Do you have a question?
That was the question. Have you tried having a civil conversation with ISIS?
I don't know. You're just like, why would I go talk to an ISIS terrorist when I'm a Jewish conservative woman and their ideology instructs them to kill me?
I mean, if they kill you, you'll be a martyr for your cause. You know, die for your beliefs. You know.
Perhaps you should take your own advice.
Damn. Okay.
Next question.
Hi. So, Laura, I just wanted to ask a quick question. So, do you still identify as a quote-unquote proud Islamophobe, as you did several years ago?
Well, I think when we talk about the word Islamophobia,
well, no, this is a yes or no question.
The definition of a phobia, okay, is an irrational fear. So whether it's Islamophobia or transphobia, is it really an irrational fear to, worry about being around a group of people that makes open threats and proclamations to kill you? That's exactly what trans radicals are doing, and that's exactly what the Quran instructs devout Muslims to do. They instruct Muslims to murder, okay, and subjugate non-Muslims, including Jews like myself.
I do happen to know quite a few Muslims who are quite nice people.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that all Muslims are radical, but if you look at the Quran, okay, and you read the Quran, you will see that it instructs Muslims to subjugate and kill non-Muslims.
Okay, we're talking.
And so it's not really irrational when you're telling, when a Jewish woman is telling you that they're fearful of, an ideology. Let's make one thing clear: Islam's not a religion. Okay, it's a political ideology that wishes to impose itself in a supremacist manner on others.
Okay, so all right then. So
I answered your question.
He's granted me one more question. So you have lumped Muslims together all in one group then. I
never said it's all Muslims. I never said it's all Muslims.
Okay, that's irrelevant to my next question. Let's move on. When
practiced in its inherent form.
So am I allowed to then rightfully hate you for the subjugation of Palestinian people in Israel? Because we have made this correlation then. If we can make the correlation.
One, there's no such thing as Palestine. Two, there's no such thing as Israeli apartheid. And three, it's a free country. If you want to hate me, join the club. I've got a lot of haters. Thank you.
Nice too, by the way, bro. Thank you. Laura, I'm a big fan, man. I just want to first say, officers, I don't know where the other cowardly officer went, but this is public distortance. These guys should be kicked out the university. Whatever the word, excuse me, English is my third language. But all I want to say is, I just wanted to ask, oh, shut the fuck up, Jesus. But, I'm conservative. I've been banned. I've been silenced the same way that you've been silenced as well. I just want to ask, what are your thoughts on how the globalist policies enacted by the West, by these communists, are going to, like the globalists, they want to, put aside, they want to mix, it's just, I don't know how to explain it. But point is, how does your ideologies line up with globalism? Do you support it?
How do whose ideologies line up with globalism?
Yours.
Well, I'm not a globalist, so.
So you're
I'm an America first. I'm an America first conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. I campaigned on an immigration moratorium. I believe that we need to halt immigration in this country because we are being overrun not just by radical ideologies, which include communism and globalism, but when you have open borders and unfettered access to our country, and you're allowing for droves, right, millions of people from societies and countries whose values and views are completely incompatible with Western civilization and the United States Constitution, we need to crack down on that. And so I support, restrictive immigration policies so that we can keep America, America.
Because my parents came from a communist country with nothing, and now, we're a very wealthy family. And I really agree with what you said on the affirmative action. I had the grades for Harvard. I had the grades for Yale because I'm a white, rich man. They didn't accept me. And they won't accept me to dental school or law school anyway. I appreciate what you're doing. God bless you.
Thank
you.
You
can stay up and get photos. Okay, so I kind of have two questions. So the word fascism has been thrown around a lot by both sides. I kind of want to know your definition of what you feel is fascism. And then I kind of want it, so your main kind of thing was you're supporting free speech, right? So I'm kind of wondering what concrete sort of solutions are you advocating for? Like, should the government do something to promote free speech? Like, what do you see as like solutions for that.
Well, I want to ask you, what is your definition, or what is your viewpoint of fascist? Because I saw that word being thrown around only from this side of the room tonight.
Well, you said that they're also fascist for like shouting you down.
Right. So what is your definition, or what makes me a fascist?
I didn't call you a fascist.
Right, but what is your definition of a fascist? What would make me a fascist?
I mean, fascism is a far-right ideology that supports corporatism for one thing. It's like a mixture of state power and corporate power in like a far-right sort of way. It's kind of like the opposite of communism, where like communism would be collectivization, fascism would be hyper-privatization.
It's not far right, and these are ideological inconsistencies that are shouted by radicals, including many of the individuals here tonight, who call people Nazis and fascists, which are actually radical leftist ideologies. They are, and
well,
so
I mean, it's not true.
I
mean, the Nazis are not at all.
But let's just look at people's behavior tonight, okay?
Not
once have I advocated for anybody here tonight to be silenced, okay? My speech was delayed over my speech was delayed an hour tonight, and my time frame that I was allotted to speak tonight, that people paid for in the form of tickets, was interrupted because people were shouting me down. And so, this is a crisis.
So do you think it's more of like an insult than anything else, really?
It's not an insult. It's a violation of people's civil rights. And
no,
so
I'm talking
you
about
asked
the
my
word
solution.
fascism being more of an insult than it is like a political ideology at this point.
Yeah, it's an insult, but it's a misguided insult because they clearly don't understand the history behind the term. And so to answer the last part of your question so that we can get to everybody. The solutions for the war on free speech and all of this technological censorship, there's various forms. We need litigation. That's why I have a $10 billion RICO lawsuit right now against Facebook, Twitter, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jack Dorsey for this criminal conspiracy. And
so
we do know that it's a criminal
conspiracy. So you think the courts are kind of the way to do it?
The courts, but also, too, we see that Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is really outdated. It was created prior to the invention of all of these different social media sites. And so I'm in favor, and I also campaigned on repealing Section 230. But as I mentioned in my speech, these civil rights violations are getting a broad brush, right, across the board, targeting people because of their viewpoints. You don't even have to say anything that's considered hate speech, even though there's no such thing as hate speech in this country. You just have to exist as a conservative or a political dissident, because there are some leftists who are also being silenced in this country. And so the solution to that is to update our civil rights laws to include political affiliation as a protected class. Because until these companies and multinational corporations and even lawmakers themselves understand that it is a violation of civil rights laws to silence somebody because of their political views, nothing's going to change in this country.
So make political affiliation a protected class?
I do believe we need to do that, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I got you. All right. Are you still running for Congress?
Well, I ran in 2020 and 2022, and I intend to run again, but I haven't filed the paperwork for, this next election season.
You tweeted that someone needs to create a non-Islamic form of Uber and Lyft, and I'm just asking. Yeah. I'm not like really far left or far right. I'm kind of like in the middle. So I'm asking, like, how can somebody represent everybody with rhetoric like that?
Well, my tweet, as I wrote about in my book, okay, the reason I tweeted somebody needed to create a non-Islamic form of Uber and Lyft is because I was actually thrown out of an Uber for being Jewish by a Muslim driver on Rosh Hashanah, who, when he realized I was Jewish, okay, he said, "Get the F out of my Uber, you stupid effing Jew." And so when this was reported, when I was living in New York at the time, this was actually reported to Bill de Blasio's civil rights unit. And then about a month later, there was an ISIS terrorist, you can look it up, real story, who was driving for Uber, who used a truck to mow down about 12 people in a bike lane in Manhattan and killed about 8 of them. And so, at the time, the CEO of Uber was a Muslim, and there had been multiple instances of Muslim drivers who were ISIS terrorists, either committing acts of terrorism with their vehicles. It's not made up. This has happened multiple times, and also raping women. And so if these companies are not going to do proper background checks to ensure that people like yourself and others are safe while driving in somebody else's vehicle, then they need to address that.
The solution is banning all Islamic drivers?
I'm not saying ban all Islamic drivers, but I used this guerrilla tactic and provocation in my speech, which still should be protective, no matter how
I think it should
no
be
matter
protected.
how
I
offensive
do.
my
I think it
speech
should
may
be.
be.
Yeah.
I used provocation through my tweet to raise awareness about what I viewed to be a safety risk. I'm not denying tweeting what I tweeted.
All right.
And I answered your question. Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, what's your question?
Okay. Okay, so.
I can't hear you.
Okay, so I'm new here. I don't really know you personally.
I can't. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to speak a little bit louder because they're yelling outside.
Okay, sorry. I'm new here. I don't really know you personally, and I'm just like curious. I'm here with them, but I just want to ask like a certain question just about like the meeting changes and being late, just respectfully. Like, I just want to know, like, you mentioned how you got threats of violence from what you call the radical woke leftists, and I'm just curious because I want to know, like, what kind of, can you give at least one quote of one of those threats? Because I've known.
Well, the university contacted the host, so Uncensored America. So, Sean, you can go ahead and answer that question and talk about the type of threats of violence that were issued tonight that caused the campus security and campus administrators to call you and tell you that the venue was changed tonight, which is the reason why the event was delayed. So why don't you give a few examples?
Yeah, I was called by our venue, which was the Graduate Hotel, and they basically said, and well, we actually had two previous venues, I'd say. There was first a venue on campus that was deemed unsafe because of the expected pushback. And then when we contacted a new venue, which was the Graduate Hotel, they said that they received threats involving firearms and other things. They didn't really get explicit with me, but if you want to ask them, you can. They can tell you all the threats that they received, but they said that due to threats and everybody's safety that they couldn't allow this event to happen.
Did they say the threats came from trans activists?
You can call them and ask.
They didn't say that. So
We'll have time for one last question from you, and then we're going to have to end, unfortunately, because this is when our reservation ends.
Yeah.
The threats.
Okay.
The threats did come from trans radicals because there is a group, and I'll pull up the tweet right now so that you can see, and perhaps some of you are even members of this organization.
You need to stop lying. It's insane.
I'm not a liar.
You're a liar. You're a liar.
The group OATSC tweeted, fascist former political candidate Laura Loomer will be speaking tonight at the Graduate, 1619 Pendleton Street, Columbia, South Carolina, 8 p.m. Come rally against her and show that hate won't go unanswered. And then underneath the tweet in the thread, there were a series of other tweets made by the same account that called for people to shut the event down. When you're threatening, the university officials received phone calls of direct threats of violence. They did. Not a liar.
All right. That's unfortunately all the time we have for today. So, Laura, if you want to make one last comment, more welcome.
Yeah, so I have a book that I wrote. It's called Loomered, How I Became the Most Banned Woman in the World. And I know that, unfortunately, the speech was disrupted tonight. And so I'm going to be taking a list of orders. And the book is $30. And if you want to purchase the book, I will take your information with me. And then when I get back to Florida tomorrow, I will be sure to ship out a signed copy of my book for anybody that wants a copy. And then you can learn more about my story and, you know, what I intended to speak to you about tonight without the disruption. So thank you so much for attending tonight. And thank you for standing your ground in the midst of anti-free speech radicalism.
Thank you so much for everybody for coming out. Thank you, Laura, for speaking, and everybody that helped out with the event. I'd love to thank everybody, but we don't have time, unfortunately, so thank everybody who was respectful and was actually letting her talk so that you could listen and learn and hear a different perspective or a perspective you may have already agreed with. So if you want to find out more about us or Laura, you can go to loomer.com for more about her and uncensored.us for more about us. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.